While seasonal anime has become the dominant force in the Western anime fandom, these last few years have been really good to old school anime fans as well. Every year, more and more old anime are being given HD facelifts and making the jump to Blu-ray. And while some of the upscalings and remasterings have been, shall we say, less than ideal, we're now able to watch all-time classics like Cowboy Bebop, Revolutionary Girl Utena, Patlabor, Escaflowne, Nadia, Yu Yu Hakusho, Ranma, and so many Gundam series in higher fidelity than was ever possible before. Still, for every great anime that gets the HD treatment, it seems like 10 more are left waiting in the wings for their turn. So to help narrow the field a bit, here are 4 anime that I think are begging for a Blu-ray release. Now, normally with my top lists, I'm making recommendations for you guys to watch, and I am definitely still doing that here. If any of these shows catch your eye, I highly recommend checking them out because they're all fantastic. But this video is also directed at any anime licensing companies who might be watching this channel for whatever reason. If you can make Blu-ray or HD streaming releases of any of these shows happen, I promise that I will personally use every shilling technique at my disposal to make them a success. With that said, my first friendly demand for a Blu-ray release is a show that I talked about, albeit briefly, very recently, Muharram Addict, Automatic Maiden. A love story about a former combat android who has a little over a year to live and decides to spend it working as a teenage boy's maid. Trust me, it makes more sense in context. But I'm sure that, if you're looking at the screen right now, I need to provide absolutely no context as to why I want to see this show on Blu-ray. As I talked about in my video on traditional anime production, Muharram Addict was the last show that Gainax ever made with cells on paint before going fully digital, which means that it's one of very few traditionally produced widescreen format anime. And those traditional production techniques are very important, not just because I personally like the look of them, but because when it comes to upscaling and remastering efforts, cell animation just gives us a lot more to work with. Digital anime are generally produced with their intended resolution in mind, and of course they only exist as digital files, so when remastering older digital anime, unless the original animation project files still exist, often the best that can be done is just upscaling the original footage, which produces less than stellar results. But traditionally produced anime had to be recorded on film, which was then transferred to video and other formats, and the original film negatives retain those images at a much higher resolution than the final broadcast or home video release. So as long as the film was preserved correctly, either by the film lab or the studio, it can be cleaned up and retransferred to a high-definition digital format, revealing new details in the art that weren't visible originally, be they tiny errors or even intentional artistic flourishes. As one of the last anime ever produced in this way, the first season of Muharram Addict is a bit of a swan song for those old techniques, and arguably marks the pinnacle of many traditional animators' careers. And on top of that, it's the last traditional example of the famous Gainax bounce, something that needs to be preserved in high definition. Muharram Addict is already out on Blu-ray in Japan, and it looks goddamn gorgeous too, so a lot of the hard work has already been done on this. And Sentai Filmworks already owns the rights to the series. It's streaming on HiDive right now. So barring any legal issues, at this point it's just a matter of adding the existing subtitles and dubbed audio track to that remastered footage and printing a Region 1 Blu-ray. And when I poked Sentai about it on Twitter, well, they didn't say yes, but they didn't say no either, so I'd say the odds of this hitting Blu-ray in the States eventually are pretty good. Now, I've already talked about this next show, Now and Then Here and There, on my fantasy anime list, so I'll save you the long summary. But in short, it's a late 90s isekai anime with a plucky shonen protagonist who is sent to a future hellscape. So think Digimon, but more, post-apocalyptic and depressing, even more so than Tamers. This needs to come out on Blu-ray for a lot of reasons. Firstly, it's stunning, and those visuals deserve to be rendered in full HD. This is one of the best directed anime ever made. But more than that, it's been stuck in licensing hell for years now, ever since ADV shut down, and I just want to see someone do something with it. Because Now and Then Here and There is one of the greatest anime ever made, plain and simple, and more people need to have a chance to watch it. You know, without spending $90 plus on a DVD set. And I think the market's there for it, at least if it's advertised, right? I mean, the show's written by Hideyuki Kurata, who more recently penned Welcome to the Space Show and Samurai Flamenco, not to mention the adaptations of Drifters, The World God Only Knows, and, oh yeah, Made in Abyss, so you know he knows his way around doomed children, and in general, this is exactly the kind of show that hardcore anime fans are loving right now. The trouble lies in getting that license and finding the footage to remaster in the first place, since there's never actually been a Blu-ray release of this show in Japan. That may well mean that the original reels for the show are lost to time, and it would be a goddamn tragedy if that was the case. But this was a fairly high-budget production, and pretty recent to boot. The show came out in 1999, so the odds that the masters are still out there somewhere are a lot higher than they would be with something older. So I'd say that now and then, here and there, could make it to Blu-ray, but there would probably need to be a Kickstarter or something to make that happen. In the meanwhile, you can pick the series up on DVD if you've got $90 to spare, and I highly recommend doing so because, like I said, it's amazing. If you want to hear more about it, I talked about the series in depth on my fantasy anime list, so go check that out at the end of this video or the link in the description. Next, we've got another show that I've recommended before, The Irresponsible Captain Tyler. Now, if you haven't seen my sci-fi anime list, Captain Tyler is a rip-roaring space adventure that asks what would happen if a buffoonish, happy-go-lucky comedy protagonist like, say, Mr. Bean, accidentally stumbled into the captain's chair of the Star Trek Enterprise. And man, it rings a lot of great comedy, from the clash between its melodramatic space opera narrative and the titular Tyler's slapstick antics. Try saying that 5 times fast. Tyler has uncharacteristically fluid animation for an early 90s anime, coupled with at times insanely detailed background artwork. Not to mention some highly detailed animation cells that would put the background paintings in other shows to shame. Seriously, this stuff looks like it shouldn't be moving. It's a world that feels alive and lived in, and I just want to be able to take a closer peek at it. It already looks great on DVD, but it begs for a high-definition version that would allow us to see the finer details in its cityscapes and its technology, and to fully appreciate its crisp character art. God damn, I love this show. And so do, from what I can tell, the folks at Nozomi Entertainment and Right Stuff, who own the license and push it on their store pretty much every time they have a chance.
Now, this is a recommendation from the Dark Lord himself. His favorite anime.
Nozomi has also been pushing harder than just about anyone to remaster old school anime like Aria, Martian Successor Nadesco, the recently released Utena box set, and basically every Gundam series. I mean, just look at this incredible box set of Gundam Wing that they sent us a little while back. It's triggering my Canadian nostalgia hard. If you're interested, I'll put a store link in the doobly-doo. So the will to give Tyler his own Blu-ray seems to be there, and lucky us, so does the way. Once again, there has already been a remastered version of Irresponsible Captain Tyler released on Blu-ray in Japan. So barring any crazy licensing problems, my guess is that this one is only a matter of time. I just wish I could say that for our last anime. I couldn't rightly end this without discussing what is quite possibly the most requested Blu-ray release in the entire Western anime fandom, Neon Genesis Evangelion. I don't think I really need to say much about why Evangelion is so important. It upended the mecha genre, changed the face of TV anime forever, and paved the way for other studios to make ambitious original projects like it. It skyrocketed Gainax to the forefront of the industry, while simultaneously generating such an absurd amount of revenue that the company's president decided to hoard some of it just in case, and ended up getting sent down for tax evasion, but that's a story for another day. Evangelion redefined anime and introduced it to a whole new generation of fans around the world. And yet, at a time when anime is more popular in the West than it's ever been before, there is literally no legal way to watch Evangelion over here. You can't stream it, and the only English DVDs available were released by ADV almost 2 decades ago and have long since been discontinued, selling for somewhere in the ballpark of way too much fucking money for one TV show. So, Eva is one of the most culturally significant anime of all time. It's also one of the most in-demand anime releases of all time for Western fans. It's also been remastered on Blu-ray in Japan already. So why the heck hasn't someone snapped up the rights, thrown it up on a streaming platform, and put it out on Blu-ray here? The short answer is money, though not in the way that you might think. Yes, the rights to release the anime in North America were thrown into limbo with the closure of ADV in 2009, but many of their other licenses have been reacquired over the years and even been remastered. The thing is, Eva is kind of in a unique position. The real problem, as far as I can tell, seems to be Gainax. They've already gotten into fights over the rights. In 2011, ADV had to sue Gainax over a previously agreed upon film rights option that the studio refused to take payment for or honor, which apparently ended up stopping the production of a live-action Eva movie at a major studio. And while it's probably a good thing that that movie was never made, all things considered, the whole kerfuffle around it shows that Gainax has become much less willing over the years to license the original Eva series outside of Japan. And that's probably because it's worth way too much to them. Remember that Japanese Blu-ray box that I brought up a minute ago? It retailed for an absurd MSRP of 41,000 yen, or around $400, and people bought it in droves. However, that would change immediately if the show could be purchased for less than that on Blu-ray in the States. Japanese fans would just be able to reverse import it, and Gainax wouldn't be able to charge that insane markup. Which, to be fair, is probably worth more to them in the long term than they could reasonably charge for the license, and since everyone with talent left the company years ago, they have very little chance of making something of that value ever again. So, unless something changes, don't expect this release to come anytime soon. But those other shows, I think we've got at least a decent shot of seeing them in our lifetime. And Nozomi, Sentai, anyone else who might be listening? Remember, I have pledged all of my shill power to make any of these a hit if they do come out. As for the rest of you, I've barely scratched the surface on this subject, so I'll pass it off to you. What older anime do you think deserve a remastering, and what is it about those shows or movies that makes you want to see them in HD? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell to catch every video I make from now on. I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.